Hello. A couple of weeks ago, YouTube on their own channel posted a super cute video celebrating 10 years of Booktube, and this was hosted by Cindy and Jack Edwards, where they were discussing some of the most popular and talked about books of Booktube from the past decade, as well as their own personal Booktube journeys. And I was incredibly flattered that some video clips of me were included in this video. It made me feel like, oh, you really like me, and I've made it. So that was absolutely lovely to see, and I'll put a link to that video in the description below in case you haven't seen it yet. Now, I thought I would do my own personal spin on this video and talk about my own personal Booktube journey, and to do this, I've selected one of my favorite books of literary fiction from each of those years to discuss, because I primarily read literary fiction, and I know all of these books, people have commented on my videos saying that they read them because I recommended them, and that is always the best thing for me when I get a comment from someone saying, oh, I read this book and loved it, it's one of my new favorite books, and because you recommended it. That is such a great feeling. And conversely, I have got so many great reading recommendations through Booktube and had so many great discussions with other readers. Sometimes we've agreed, sometimes we've disagreed about the books we've been reading, and that is part of the whole pleasure and point of Booktube. So I am first going to go all the way back to 2016 when I first started regularly posting videos on this channel. And the main reason that I started posting videos was because since I'm such a huge fan of the work of Joyce Oates, and I've read a lot of her work, and I've had so many readers ask me what book should they start reading from her enormous catalog. And so I thought, well, I should just go and make a video discussing this, to help readers and direct them, trying to point them in the right direction. And so since then, I've made multiple videos on this subject because I still get this question all the time. So there's a number of videos out there of me discussing this. But I was also, I always followed a lot of book prizes. And so at the time, the Bailey's Prize for Fiction, which is now called the Women's Prize for Fiction, was going on. So I made a video talking about that as well. And so yeah, just really got into this habit of discussing what I was reading about book prizes and all things to do with literary fiction. And so started regularly making videos. And one of my favorite books from 2016 that I thought was so extraordinary is Solar Bones by McCormack. This is an Irish novel set in the west of Ireland, following the consciousness of a man in a house as he is reflecting on his life, but it also presents the course of a day that is occurring around him, and it is just such a unique way of presenting consciousness that I've never encountered before, and the writing in it is incredibly poetic and powerful, and it's just a really beautiful way of reflecting on life and existence, and thought it was an incredible novel. Now, in 2017, I was quite infrequent in making videos. At first in 2016, and they were very rough. Really not the sound and the quality of them was really quite poor. And so I started upping my game a bit more, tried to make a bit more effort in the actual production of it, but also got involved in a lot more of the standard Booktube things of doing book tags and making reading wrap-ups and making book haul videos. Those are kind of the staples of Booktube and things that I still regularly do because it's just sort of part of the reading life, and so these videos and talking about what I'm reading, what I think of it, and what I'm reading next is just a natural thing. And so one of my favorite books from 2017, and yes, I'm going to get to Joyce Oates now, is a book of American Martyrs, and this is quite a long, lengthy novel that deals with a subject and issue issue in America, which is still very much relevant today, to do with abortion and the debate surrounding of pro-choice and pro-life, and looks at individuals from two sides of this issue who at the very beginning of the book get in a massive conflict about it. And then we follow the daughters of these two men as they grow and progress and have interactions with each other. And so we see the fallout and repercussions of the conflict surrounding this issue through the lives of these young women as they are growing and living in modern day America. And it is such a moving and powerful novel and so creative, because it's, I think, one of the only books that's about abortion where it doesn't actually portray an abortion in the course of the narrative. It looks at this issue in a really fascinating way, but also has such compelling characters. It is so psychologically intense. I'm following their journey and their interactions with each other and their reflections on this history. I think it is an incredible and really important book for us to read today. So in 2018, I think I started to really find my stride of like developing more videos and being more regular in following book prizes, and also for the first time was starting to get invited to some book prize events and ceremonies, and finding people reaching out to me, which I didn't expect at all. I mean, I just sort of started talking about all these things as a fanboy that had regularly followed these prizes for years. And so it was incredibly exciting to find myself at some like actual ceremonies of like the Booker Prize. And I mean, at first, when I was invited to the first Booker Prize like party, I wasn't invited to the ceremony itself. There was sort of a strange thing where I was, when there was sort of a pre-party and drinks that I went to and was invited to, and so very excited to be there and to be mingling with all the publishers and authors whose books I really loved. And but then at a certain point, when there was going to be the sit-down dinner and actual announcement ceremony, I was told with some other journalists that had to leave, and but since then I've been invited to the actual ceremony, so I've been able to actually witness some of the announcements being made, and so that's been incredibly wonderful, as well as a number of other book prizes like the Women's Prize and many other book prizes that I follow. And so this is sort of like part of the journey that I didn't expect that would occur, that I would get opportunities like this, that has been incredibly wonderful. Now, one of my favorite books from that year was Washington Black by S.C. Edugyan, and this is one of the most incredible like historical novels. It looks at the life of a boy born into slavery in the Caribbean, who has a natural scientific ability, and he meets a scientist who recognizes that he has these natural gifts and takes him on as an assistant. And so we follow him in an episodic journey across the world as they conduct a number of experiments and make some discoveries, but also he goes on this journey of self-transformation and discovery, and tries to find a place for himself in the world. And I found it just such an amazing adventure, as well as giving a really unique look at history and the psychology of this extraordinary boy. And I just like fell in love with him. And it has one of the most memorable scenes from literature I can think of in the past decade of this scene that occurs underwater that I think is so incredible. So at last year's Booker ceremony, I was incredibly privileged and lucky to speak to S.A. Edugyan before the ceremony, because she was the chair of the Booker Prize judges that year, and got to sit at a table with her like at the ceremony. Now, one of the wonderful things about being part of the Booktube community is that we can highlight and talk about books that we personally feel so passionate about about, whether these are hugely popular books or these are obscure books that we haven't heard anybody else discussing. And it's one of the main reasons that I still like make videos, and because I want to connect with other readers who have been reading books that I have been reading and really want to discuss them. So in 2019, one of those books was Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawlor. And this novel is so creative and playful and fun, while also discussing gender and trying to fit into society when you are slightly different from the norm in such an extraordinary way. It's set in the early 90s and follows an individual, Paul, as he travels to a number of different places, meets a number of different social groups, and while doing so transforms genders, switches back and forth in genders, and has a number of friendship encounters and romantic encounters and sexual encounters with other people, and in such an interesting way of looking at identity and gender identity in this way. And I found it so moving. I really connected with this book on a number of different levels, and just think it's an incredible creative achievement. And so I just love it. In 2020, because of the global pandemic, I was spending pretty much all of my time at home, except for slight excursions out into London, which was incredibly odd because the city was absolutely empty. So a lot of the social connections and interaction I had, like all of us, were online, and so it felt like the Booktube community was more important than ever. And I was spending a lot of time at home, reading even more than usual, and so having this outlet to be able to discuss what I was reading really made me feel less alone and connected to other people. And one of my favorite books from that year was Minor Detail by Adania Shibli, and this story is very short but incredibly impactful, looking at the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians in the Middle East, and giving such a unique and emotional perspective on it. I think this tale is just so striking, how it looks through a personal lens, and then that expands out to the larger history and conflict which is occurring. So this novel is even more relevant than ever, but is an incredible piece of fiction. Now, over the course of the pandemic, and as lockdowns were still occurring in 2021, I found that I had an idea about something that I could do on my channel, which I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me before, but I'm someone who's always enjoyed going to author readings and author talks to hear some of my favorite authors talk about their own work. And I've always had that geeky thing where I'm usually one of the first people in the audience to ask a question, because I'm so eager to interact with the author and discuss some things that I've been really wanting to talk to them about. And I always do phrase it in the form of a question, rather than making a large statement about what I think about their book, which sometimes occurs in literary audiences and is very awkward. But during the pandemic, I had the idea, because I couldn't go to any author readings, they weren't occurring except online, and I thought, well, why don't I reach out to some publishers that I've been in touch with and ask them if I can interview the authors myself? And so I started interviewing authors in this way, and I've spoken to Joyce multiple times now, and I got to interview Richard Powers about his incredibly moving and beautiful and powerful and relevant novel Bewilderment, which follows the story of a father and son, and is looking at issues to do with the environment as well as neurodivergence, and it's an incredibly touching story about family, but also our engagement with trying to protect the environment and the lengths that we will go to do so. And so, I found this book incredibly moving, absolutely like heartbreaking in some ways, but so striking and original, and had the most wonderful conversation with Richard Powers about it, and posted that interview I did with him on my channel, which I felt incredibly privileged to do, and I'm so excited to read his new novel. In 2022, I was finding and discovering some great books through Booktube that were being much discussed, and which I don't think would have been as popular if they weren't being discussed on Booktube so much. So one of my favorite novels from that year was Elena Knows by Claudia Pineiro. And this was listed for the International Booker Prize, but even so, like, I don't think it would have got the attention it had, and Claudia Pineiro wouldn't have started having more of an international reputation if she hadn't been celebrated and discussed on Booktube so much. And this novel is incredible, and because it fuses two things, and that it tells a really gripping story, and there's a whole mystery at the center of this book concerning the death of the daughter of the protagonist of Elena, but also following Elena's journey, who has a severely debilitating illness, as she tries to investigate her daughter's death, and how it follows her moment-to-moment existence as she is going on this journey, but then also this gradually broadens out into larger issues to do with religion and politics in such a striking and moving way. And so, yeah, it's an incredible book, and it's, I think, deservedly so that it's been so celebrated and much discussed, and that even more readers are still discovering it and reading more of her work, and more of her work is being translated and published into English, which is absolutely wonderful. Another book that I only discovered through Booktube is Solenoid by Mircea Cartarescu. And so in 2023, this wasn't only one of my favorite books from last year, but I think it is one of the most extraordinary novels that I have ever read. It is very dense and complex. It took me a long time to read it because it explores a lot, and it uses a lot of complicated language and sentences, but is so insightful and beautiful, but also incredibly imaginative. How it follows the story of a man who's keeping a notebook about his life and has a number of surreal encounters, and how this follows his consciousness as he transforms and changes and tries to find a way to discover meaning in existence. So he's looking at really the big questions of life, and this is a novel that has only been imported into the UK. I was only able to purchase it because it was an import, but I was glad that I purchased it and had it delivered to me, because it's such an incredible reading experience. I think since then it's been properly published in the UK, or it will be soon. I think somebody told me that. So hopefully it will be nominated or eligible for next year's International Booker Prize, because what an incredible novel. And I know some other readers I know on my online book club have been reading it as well, and it's been so wonderful. Like last year I started my online book club, and we have been having so many great discussions, and it kind of reinvigorated the pleasure I take in discussing books with people online, of having really lengthy and interesting discussions with people about books, rather than just very brief ones through the comments of my videos, which are still wonderful, and I still have so many great discussions with readers from that way, but having a book club where we're all reading the same thing at the same time and then discussing it at the same time has been absolutely wonderful. And finally, we are at 2024, and one of my favorite books from this year so far, and one that I read with my online book club and that we had such great discussions about, is My Friends by Hisham Matar, which inserts a fictional character into a real historical event, a tragic event that occurred in London in the 80s, and then follows the journey of this character in the aftermath as he experiences exile from his native Libya, and his progression journey forward and his connection with other people who are similarly expats, and their complicated relationship with their homeland, but also their struggle to persist and survive and maintain a sense of sanity in such tragic events, and how it follows his journey and his the very quiet moments he finds to reflect on art and literature as ways to kind of transcend the madness of politics and global conflict is so beautiful and so relevant. And so, yes, I hope this novel will, and it's already won some prizes. It won the George Orwell Prize for Political Fiction. Hopefully it will win some more that it's currently entered into, and we will see how that goes. But yeah, I think it's such a beautiful novel, and one that I was so glad to share with other readers and discuss with them in a detailed level. So those are some of my favorite books from my booktube journey, and some some episodes from the past 9 years. And yeah, it's been a really interesting ride. I've made a lot of discoveries and made a lot of wonderful friends and connections through this, sometimes quite like fleeting, just through like a single comment, and other relationships which have built up over time and have become long-lasting friendships. And so yeah, I definitely didn't expect this when I first joined Booktube, but I found it such a wonderful community in this way, and one that I feel really excited and proud to be a part of. So I'd love to hear about some of your own personal favorite books from since you started watching Booktube or joined Booktube or started making videos yourself, if you do so, or yeah, if you want to discuss your own personal Booktube journey, like if as a viewer or a creator, like how did you first discover it? Who did you first start watching? And what book discoveries have you made since then? I would love to hear about that in the comments below. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.